Well, welcome to the podcast. I'm Joel here with my dad.
And I'm Rick, and we're glad you're here today.
Dad, I want to talk today about speaking your mind, which is something that I've pretty much done my whole life, and it has caused me a lot of pain.
Yeah.
In fact, most of the time what got me in trouble as a kid was speaking my mind. It wasn't things I did. Every once in a while, like shooting a paperclip at people one time, I think you bring that up a lot. But the big thing is always stuff I said. Now, you were, sometimes you'd be like, you don't say those things. And other times you would you were very judicious about how you doled out punishment on that, because you've often said this, and we've talked about this in the past, that oftentimes the thing that's the biggest curse to you as a child is actually your greatest gift once you learn to control it. So you used to say that, that speaking your mind, that's going to be a real blessing if I don't kill you before adulthood, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to talk about that because there's a lot in Proverbs about the fool speaking his mind.
Oh, yeah.
But yet sometimes we've got to speak out on things. So what's your take on when, first of all, as Christians, do we have freedom of, I guess you call it freedom of speech? I mean, Jesus, he talks about in Matthew, he says, you're going to give account for every idle word that's spoken. I mean, that's an intense statement.
So I guess you could say you could have freedom of speech, but it's not free.
Right.
You're going to pay for it.
Which is all freedom. Nothing is free. Somebody's going to pay for it. Yeah.
That's right. So you could say it, but you're probably going to pay for it later. So you just decide, is it really worth the pain, or should I just keep my mouth shut?
Okay. So Proverbs talks specifically about, you have some of the verses there. What are some of the verses where it talks about about speaking your mind, and what Proverbs says about people who speak their mind?
Well, there's a whole bunch of them about it. It talks about how, I think of one, is it Ephesians? What is it? I can't think of where it is now, but it talks about let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to edifying, which says then that there's some controls we are to exercise over our mouth. Let no corrupt, let no bad communication, evil communication proceed from your mouth, but that which is good to edifying. So we are to control what comes out of our mouth. And so, I just, if it's in there, I have to say it.
Yeah.
No, not really.
Which is interesting because Jesus, right in that part where he says, I'll tell you, everyone will give account for every careless word they say. Just 2 verses before that is where he says this. He says, the good person out of the good treasure brings forth good, and the evil person out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth will speak. You go, oh.
Yeah.
So.
Another place he says it's what comes out. It's not what goes in that defiles, it's what comes out of your mouth that defiles you. And so, again, because that's what's actually revealing what's in your heart. And so if you don't like what's coming out of your mouth, when you say, oh, I didn't mean to say that, or it was in there or it wouldn't have come out.
Yeah.
And so just controlling your mouth is secondary. Primary would be, that revealed something in my heart that I need to deal with, first of all. And so it's a good, like a warning light. If the warning light on your car is going off, you don't put a tape over the light.
Yeah.
You find, there's some other problem there. So if your mouth is saying things that it shouldn't be saying, you don't just try to stop saying that. You go to the source and figure out, what's in my heart that would cause me to behave that way or say that or believe that. So just go into the source.
Which is where it's interesting because, so for example, I know a lot of people, I'm this way sometimes. I don't really know what I'm thinking until I say it.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's what a lot of counseling is. It's a safe space where you can say whatever, and the counselor, that's why they say the counselor should not give any response. They should just let you, how do you feel about that? Is because as you're speaking it through, you're realizing what you're saying. And Jordan Peterson talks a little bit about that. He says, we have a responsibility to speak our mind. And the essence of what he's saying is, first of all, a lot of times we don't speak our mind because we're afraid of how it'll be perceived. But a lot of times, too, when we speak our mind, we figure out what our mind actually thinks. So there's an element of we don't really know what's inside of us or what we think until we say it, and so you have to talk it out.
Right.
So how do you talk it out without the risk of it damaging you? I mean, or like me ending up at the principal's office.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of that has to do with how you talk it out, and that's respectfully. I did at one of my parenting blogs, I talked about how when you should allow your kids to talk back to you. And and the illustration I used was in Guatemala, when there's a volcano that's always kind of spewing, that's kind of a safe volcano.
Yeah.
Because it's always letting off steam, you know?
You know what to predict, yeah.
Yeah, and so you kind of know it's coming. But when one's capped up and it builds up and it builds up and then boom, it explodes. And so letting our kids speak their mind, letting our kids express their frustration, letting our kids, that's a positive thing, but we need to teach them to do it respectfully.
Mm.
And and that's what I tried to do, with you guys, and I think pretty much anybody in my life, people who work with me or work for me now, you can say what you want to say, but please say it respectfully so that I can try to receive it and process it through. I may disagree with you, but I at least want to hear it, because if I don't even at least hear it, then I can't evaluate your take on that. And so what I'm saying is, how do we do that? If I have a problem with my wife, or if I have a problem with a friend or something, I can speak my mind if I do it respectfully and I do it humbly, realizing, hey, I could be totally off base here.
Yeah, which I've found that for me sometimes too. I say, hey, listen, when somebody says this, hey, I'm just talking this through for the first time, so I may not say this exactly like I mean. I'm like, okay, I can listen with a little more flexibility.
Yeah.
But when you come off like, blah, 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 blah,
this is the way it is.
And they were like, oh, well, I'm totally disagree with you. But really, you were like, actually, I don't even know if I agree with what I just said.
Yeah.
I've had that for me. I'm like, I'm not even sure I agree with what I just said.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, until you hear yourself.
Yeah, so it's the qualifying it, saying, hey, I'm about to speak my mind, and there's a possibility, I really do believe there's a possibility I'm wrong, and I'm saying this for the first time, and it may not be actually what I.
So I think that's a good way we can do it, is if we can do it respectfully and do it humbly and just acknowledge up front, I could be totally off base. Give me another perspective on this. Help me to see if I'm missing something here. Then you can say, what's in there.
Which is what's lacking in today's discourse, really.
Yeah.
Is, we're so assertive about everything, and that's where you get, of course, and then when you do it online, there's just no room for nuance. So you speak your mind, but there's no room for nuance. Whereas with you and me talking here, I can see your facial expressions. I can hear you. I can hear kind of the, maybe I'm wrong about this in your voice, but there's no room for that in black and white writing.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, because the power of the spoken word is what brought the world into existence. God spoke, and it brought life into existence. So there is an element of, when we speak, it brings, it reveals things. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Wow, this is lofty stuff. Like, God spoke, and the goodness of the earth was created out of his spoken word, let there be.
That's good.
I just thought of that. But there's some real depth to the idea that there is power in speaking out. And sometimes we have an obligation to speak out. But what I find is interesting is, a lot of times people speak out. So much of it's just in the tone of, or they speak out against something and they don't know all of the details of everyone involved. I guess I'm seeing people here. I'm just saying this for the first time, so if it comes out wrong, right? Here, I'll use my own little formula. But I just see a lot of people that they just speak out, this is wrong, this is wrong. I'm like, man, you don't even know the complexities of all that's involved. So it's like, are you called to speak out your mind if you see something that's wrong, or are you supposed to wait until you have a solution to speak out your mind?
Yeah. I was not dealing with, but this guy I know recently, and he's just very adamant about a lot of things. And I just realized, a little phrase came to mind. His adamancy reveals his insecurity. And so when he's talking, he's not really sure that what he's saying is right. And so he's just very, this is the way it is. You go, well, no, that's really kind of a dumb idea. It's not that way at all, And there were several of the things that he was so adamant on. And I go, boy, you don't even have the baseline understanding of that. And I realized it was an insecurity, because I was trying to figure out, why is he so adamant on these things when, 9 out of 10 guys would know that that's not even true.
Right.
And, but he was real adamant about it. And I realized it's his own insecurity. It's a way of, that way you're not going to challenge me on it, because I was very adamant about it. It's kind of like that anger gives you a feeling of strength.
Right.
When actually it makes you weaker. It actually makes you vulnerable. And so sometimes we can be real adamant on it because we aren't real sure about it.
So in that case, speaking your mind, But I mean, that's
Probably
where,
not so good.
yeah. So, but that's where if you would have done it humbly, he actually might have
Right.
learned something
Yeah,
from it.
exactly.
Yeah. It's like, hey, I may be wrong on this, but
Yeah.
and then somebody doesn't immediately have to come up with their own defensive nature. So,
Because in that situation, I was sitting there and it was in a meeting, and this guy says this thing, and I'm thinking, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But I wasn't going to say anything because I thought, whatever. He's
Yeah.
obviously not open to instruction.
right.
So,
And then he's never going to learn anything. So speaking his mind in that case is of no value to anyone,
right.
especially not to him.
Yeah, because I think everybody else sitting there going, well, that's not true, but I'm not going to challenge it. It's not worth it to me.
Well, and when you hear somebody that dogged say something that foolish, you're kind of like, don't throw another Jesus. It's not worth throwing the pearls before the pigs here.
Yeah.
Throw the sword, swine. Yeah. So that's an element too of like life-giving. There isn't a life-giving element to speaking your mind and what's coming out, the abundance of your heart speaking, if it's done with humility and you're willing to openly maybe learn something from it.
And respectfulness.
Respectfulness.
Of the other person's opinion. as
Yeah,
well.
because that's a challenge where so that sometimes they say in counseling, they always taught us in counseling, they didn't all teach us this, but some schools of counseling say, let them express their reality and just let it hang out there. But then other schools of psychology say, if it's an abject lie and wrong, you have a responsibility as a counselor to confront that.
Yeah.
And because, I mean,
I can see both. It depends on where the person is.
That's true too. But I mean, that's what you say, like, well, I just really know that, I'm sent from another planet and I was born in an egg and deposited here on Earth. You're like, no, that's not true.
Probably
that's,
not.
But if you don't,
Although I'm humble, I could be wrong.
that's true. But but there's also the element of going, because if you were to just go, wow, that's quite a reality you live in, then they just keep living in their delusion.
Yeah.
So there's an element of time where it's like, sometimes you do have to confront,
Yeah.
and of course, you could say, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, can you imagine Mary with her counselor? No, really. All of a sudden, I just woke up one day pregnant.
Angel.
Yeah, no, sweetheart. That
didn't happen.
Let's deal with the reality. No, really.
And my son, he rose from the dead. He was crucified. He rose from the... No, baby, that's...
There are aberrations from the norm, right?
Yeah.
But that's... So anyways, thoughts on that? The confronting, when it is time to speak your mind with a boldness...
Well... Here's one your mom used to quote to me all the time, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. Because I grew up in a family, with a bunch of boys, and it was kind of a rough family. And, my mom used to say, boys, take it out in the backyard, and we'd
Fight it out.
Fight it out, and then after we fought it out and everybody's beat up, then we're all good and we're friends and we're back together. We're brothers. So, but your mom used to always quote this one in Proverbs. She says, a gentle answer turns away wrath.
Yeah.
I go, oh man, I hate that. I'd just rather yell at you and get it over with, and then we're friends again. But it wasn't that way with her. It was that way with my brothers. We could fight it out and we'd yell at each other and then slug it out and we're done.
But there's the element of this. I mean, you used an example one time in a message that really stuck with me. You had this picture of a little kid, and you crumpled it all up.
It was a photograph.
A photograph. It's a picture. That's right. It's an actual picture. Back in the day when we had those photographs, printed photograph.
Yeah, some people know what those are.
Yeah, and you said, and you say, well, I just got to speak my mind. But then you realize what speaking your mind did, and you crumpled up that picture, and you say, yeah, and then you uncrumpled the picture, and you're like, look,
I'm sorry. Let me apologize.
I'm sorry. But the damage had been done to that picture with the words that were spoken, and that's where it comes back to, do we really have a right to say whatever we want to say, even if it's, even if you do it in a gentle way? Because you can really do some lifelong damage to some people with the stuff you say.
Well, again, back to Proverbs, because it says so much on the tongue. It talks about life and death are in the power of the tongue. Another proverb says, the words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. And so... yeah, you can say it and you've just stabbed the person, and then you go back and, okay, now I feel better. That's another thing I see too, is a lot of times we do feel better after we've dumped on somebody. And it's kind of like, I remember one time I was deathly ill on a missions trip, and we were in a van, and I'd been sick for 4 or 5 days, and it finally got there, and I just had to stick my head out the van, and I vomited all over the place. Beautiful picture, right? I immediately felt better.
Right.
And that's kind of how it is sometimes. We just dump on people. We just vomit all over them. We go, oh, I'm feeling so much better now.
And they're cowering in a corner.
Yeah, yeah. And they're all hurt. And they've got that stuff all over them, and it's going to be there for a long time, And going back again to our Guatemala illustration, I remember a guy, he says, well, I just do that now and then. I just blow up, it just builds up in me like maybe once a year, but it's not very often. Most of the time I'm not that way. And you go, I'd like to sell you some land alongside a volcano, on the side of a volcano.
Right.
It only erupts every 4 or 5 years. Yeah. You want to build your house there, but it's most of the time it's.
That's true.
And we think, well, only, every now and then it just gets to me and I have to let it out. Well, go kick a tree or something,
But if you don't do it humbly, gently, you can cause some serious damage.
A gentle answer turns away wrath, but harsh words stir up anger. And so, and the thing is, too, when you're doing that, like begets like, another one of those biblical principles. So if I'm coming at you attacking, well, guess what's going to immediately happen? Your just natural response. You're going to have to be really, really mature to be able to not just reflect that back to me. Because like begets like. If that's the seed I'm sowing, that's the harvest I'm going to reap. If I'm sowing seed of anger and bitter and, hey, I got it right, I know the answer, that's typically what I'm going to get back from people.
Yeah. So when it comes to the idea of so I heard somebody say one time, so you don't always have to use a sword to cut. It can also be used to point.
Right.
So you point with the sword, right?
Uh-huh.
So when you are coming face to face with something that is a lie, that is not the truth, and I mean, for certain it is not the truth, how do you speak your mind that it is not the truth in a way that, and I think I know kind of a general answer for this, but I'm curious your take on it. How do you speak the mind away in a mind, because to them it is true, right? Like you wouldn't believe it if they didn't believe it if they didn't think it was true.
Yeah, all of our opinions are correct.
In our mind. Yeah.
Yeah, in us.
yes. So when you have to confront abject lies, untruths, how do you do it in a way, again, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but you also have to present an opposing viewpoint in a way that's, I wouldn't say jolting, but might throw the other person off. Or do you have to do it in a way? Because some people say, I just present the truth and people have to deal with it as they can. But if you're living in deception, the problem with deception is you don't know you're deceived.
Right. And self-deception is the worst.
Yeah. So how do you present truth to a self-deceived person?
Well, again, I think it goes back to those two words we were using before, respectfully and humbly. What I found works a lot is, this isn't rocket science. This is what Jesus did. He just simply asked a lot of questions. And so you can ask enough questions. I think Francis Schaeffer talks about this.
Yes, yeah.
You just ask questions to where the person eventually finds their own fallacy in their...
Bring them to the end.
Yeah, in their reasoning.
And you can know they made it to the end of their own rational argument because they get angry.
Yeah, they start calling you names.
Yeah, I've had that myself, right? I had a discussion where I started asking a college professor a bunch of questions in front of the class, which was a foolish thing of me to do. But and at the end he said, fine, you have a stronger argument than me, but I'm not changing my mind.
Of course not.
And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
But he, all of a sudden I saw it click in his mind go, oh, if I go there, I have to go. I can't go there. Oh, yeah. You're an idiot.
Yeah. And what I love, what Francis Schaeffer was saying too, is if you will do that, the only totally consistent philosophy in the world is Christianity. And so any other philosophy has its flaws. You just have to find those.
Right.
And usually if you tell somebody the flaw, they're not going to accept it. They're going to cover over it. But if you can help them discover it, many times you don't know the flaw in it because you don't know what they believe.
I remember specifically something he said, though, is he said, when you get them into that position of vulnerability, you don't slice off their head with a sword.
No.
You let the Holy Spirit come and fill in the gap.
Because if you do, again, they're like begets like. And if you've attacked them, they feel attacked, they're going to attack back.
Like, I've got you on the ground, I've got my foot on your neck, you're wrong. But then all of a sudden you just step off and go, let them leave room. Basically, I think he says, when you brought them to the end of their own logical conclusions that end up not being what they end up having a flaw in them, and they've seen the inherent mortal flaw of it. You don't take them out at that point. You leave the Holy Spirit room to come in and reveal truth to them.
And I think a part of that too is because then you're dealing with pride.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to overcome and humble myself before me and the Lord. It's another thing to humble myself before me, the Lord, and you.
Yeah, it's true.
So I don't mind admitting, gosh, I was really wrong about that to me. And then I can go away having saved face,
Yeah.
And maybe, hopefully, they would humble themselves for the Lord. But if I have to admit to you, ain't no way I'm going to admit to you that I was wrong.
Right.
So I'll fight for this stupid idea, even though I now don't even believe I even believe it's a stupid idea, but I want to fight for it because I don't want to humble myself before you. There's a proverb, again, back to the Proverbs, that I think kind of gives an answer to that. If you think about it, it says this, Proverbs 17:27, the one who has knowledge uses words with restraint. Now, I don't think that means uses few words, but restrain the words you're using with wisdom. If you have knowledge, use words with restraint. Control the ones you're using. And whoever has understanding is even-tempered. So there you go. If I'm trying to convince them, I start getting frustrated and I start getting upset, I've lost it. So if I really have a point, remain even-tempered.
Yeah.
Remain calm. Again, that's respectful. That's humble. Use your words with restraint. Don't chop their head off. You see, I told you that was a stupid thing to think.
Right. Use the sword to point, not to chop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, right after that, it says, even fools are thought wise if they keep silent and discerning if they hold their tongue. So there's a matter of controlling what you say, staying even-tempered, and that has to do with being humble and being respectful. I could be wrong. And, the other thing is, again, that sowing and reaping, it applies in everything. Sowing and reaping. If I come across like, I want you to know, I am absolutely right about this, and there's no way I'm wrong, I've just sown that attitude. That's the attitude I'm going to reap back from them. But if I come at it with, I could be wrong about this, I'm open.
Yeah.
Then I've sown that seed of openness. And that's what I can expect back from another person sometimes.
And I've seen, for me, when I come in with that seed of openness, even if the other person isn't open and they don't come back with, I'm going to show you an openness. They're like, well, you're just wrong. If you've come in with that, it's kind of this
disarming.
And yeah, it's disarming, but it's also it's like I don't know. I think about like water that sneaks in under the sand and slowly erodes.
Yeah.
And so you may not see the results of it immediately. When you've got to speak your mind to somebody and you do it gently and they say, you're wrong, I know what I'm doing, blah, blah, blah. Your subtle tactic actually comes in and may gently undermine the foundation they're standing on to where they all realize they're standing on sinking sand. But it's a little more art of war-ish.
Yeah.
It's the more subtle way to do it. But the point is, you're not going to see an immediate result. And I mean, how often do we ever actually see somebody go, wow, I'm just completely wrong about my whole worldview based on this argument. I'm going to turn around.
Like never?
Yeah, I've never seen it. I wouldn't. Yeah. Because it'd be very disturbing to all of a sudden have this epiphany that you've just gotten the whole world wrong.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So we, as Christians, our obligation is to speak the truth, but speak the truth, right? Speak the truth, but do it in love.
Yeah.
And I think, but then we also recognize it's going to be a slow transformation of people. They're not going to overnight. It's not a Billy Graham crusade where because even then, the Billy Graham crusade, it may happen instantly, but it happens over the next 50 years. Yeah, even then they've come into relationship with God. They're faced with the truth. I've got a problem. Jesus answers that problem. But man, walking that out, that doesn't happen at a Billy Graham crusade. That happens in the everyday of, oh, this isn't holding up what I believed. So it's I think that's what we expect is as soon as I speak truth, people are going to change their mind.
Because it's true.
Yeah. Nope. It doesn't even work for you.
Two other illustrations. I remember I had this guy who was with us and he ministered in a Muslim country, and I had him speak at a lunch we had with a bunch of businessmen. And it was a Hindu perspective he ministered in. And somebody was saying, well, yeah, but it must be really easy to win Hindus to the Lord because all you have to do is tell them Jesus rose from the dead. And that, none of their gods rose from the dead, and he's really alive. And the guy goes, well, actually, a lot of the Hindu gods were resurrected and did come back. And the guy looked at him and kind of cross-eyed and he goes, well, yeah, but about Jesus, it's true.
Right?
It's like,
Well, of course.
it's like, oh, okay, that's all I have to tell him. It's true.
And you were there to see it? And you were there to see it?
Yeah.
Oh,
So, we just think that somehow truth is going to overwhelm people, and our truth, it is the truth, but that doesn't mean it's going to soak in real quickly. And one of the areas where I think this works, I was just thinking of a situation we've been talking with a guy with, is kids who are away from the Lord. And I've had people who will talk to me and they go, how do I reach my kids who are away from the Lord? Or I've got this problem in my family. And here's the key to that, the humility and the respectfulness, and always keep a long-term perspective. Because what you were saying is that water can go down and erode, but sometimes some people just have to hit the wall and crash and burn before they really come to it. So sometimes they'll think it through and there'll be this logic, and sometimes they just have to slam into the wall and everything explode in their life. And you want to keep a relationship to where when they hit that wall and everything explodes, they don't have to, again, overcome the pride of facing you.
Right.
You want them to be able to come to you without them having that extra barrier of, well, now I got to go tell Dad I was wrong. Now I got to go tell Mom I was wrong, And if they know that you were humble in it and they know you're respectful in it, then that's one less barrier when they do crash and burn, do the old, well, how's that working out for you? Well, it didn't work out that well. Wow, well, let's see if we can try something else here.
Well, and there's the element of if you've been kind of putting that truth below them, then when they do hit the wall, if it was spoken in love, that is going to resonate in their mind more than what was spoken in anger, but it'll resonate with a positive way, right? In a positive way.
So you always want to do it in a way, when you do need to speak that truth, do it in a way that when their philosophy crashes and burns, or their way of life, or whatever they think crashes and burns, that they know there's an open door, that somebody's going to be there to embrace them, to care about them, who was humble and respectful of them, that they can go back to.
Yeah.
And it will crash and burn eventually.
Yeah. So to kind of summarize, when it comes to speaking your mind, we are called to speak truth, but it always comes back to that speaking truth in love.
In love.
And a lot of times, if you're speaking your mind, and the thing is, you're pretty certain you're right, but you may actually be wrong. So the best way to do it, maybe the most loving way to do it, is speak it in humility, because then if you are wrong, as you're speaking it and you realize, because we've all been in that situation where we've said something, and as we're saying it, we go back and go, oh, wait, that's like, is that really what I believe? Because that's wrong. But if you've done it humbly, then you can easily go back and say, wow, I was really wrong about that. But when you speak that truth, it's got to be done. Speak your mind, do it humbly, and then you've got room to acknowledge when you spoke your mind and it showed that you were a fool, essentially.
Yeah. Well, and when you speak your mind, make sure that the reason you feel it's so important to do that is because it's good for the other person, and you're not just vomiting out on them to get it out of you, so now you feel better.
Yeah.
And that's what it talks about, make your words gracious, make your words seasoned with salt, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to edify, to build up the other person.
Yeah.
And so therefore, just because it's in my head doesn't mean I have to say it. Is this going to build the other person up? And if it's not, then maybe if it's just for me, if it's just, I'm going to feel so much better when I let them have it, when I say this or when I just dump this out of my head, then maybe I just need to go out and talk to a tree or something.
That reminds me of something Andy Stanley said. He says that the question that Jesus asks us now to always ask is, what does love require of me? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times love requires of you speaking your mind about something, but if you do it in humility. But sometimes love requires of you zipping it.
Yeah.
Just zip it until the right time, because the time will probably come for you to speak your mind. We've had that where somebody dating the wrong person, and you're like, if I tell them right now that I don't think that's the right person, it will be the wrong time, and it's going to drive them even more to there, and I won't have any it's like what you're talking about with your kids when you confront it. But then there's a moment where they come to you and say, what do you think about this? Well, I'm glad you asked. Now let me speak my mind, because there's an openness to it.
Like apples of gold in a setting of silver is a word fitly spoken at the right time in the right way. It's priceless.
If you liked what you heard, please consider sharing this with a friend. For more information, visit joelmalm.com or rickmalm.com. Thanks for listening.